Today, we're diving into Ryūnosuke Akutagawa's incredible story, In a Grove. Now, it kicks off looking like a pretty standard crime story, but trust me, it very quickly goes off the rails and ends up making you question, well, pretty much everything you think you know about truth. So, the setup is just brilliant in its simplicity. Picture this. Deep inside a quiet bamboo grove, a samurai is found dead. The authorities start investigating, and what they find isn't a lack of clues, but way too many. Because get this, 3 different people come forward, and every single one of them confesses to the crime. And this is where it gets really wild. First, you've got this notorious bandit, Tajomaro. He brags about how he tied up the samurai, had his way with the wife, and then killed the husband in this epic sword fight. Then, the wife steps up with her story. She says she was so overcome with shame that she is the one who killed her husband. And then, and this is the part the story is famous for, the samurai's own ghost speaks through a medium and insists that he actually killed himself out of dishonor. So, who do you believe? And see, that's the trap Akutagawa sets for us. Your brain immediately kicks into detective mode, right? You're trying to sift through the stories, find the holes, figure out who's the real liar. We are hardwired to look for that one single truth. But what if that's the wrong way to look at it? What if we're asking the completely wrong question? This quote, even though it's imagined, really just nails what the author was getting at. This story was never meant to be a simple whodunit. It's more of a why done it, and in a much deeper way. Akutagawa wasn't really interested in which story was factually correct. What he was fascinated by was our own desperate need for a clean, simple, reassuring answer.
So that leads us to the real question here. If these people aren't just lying to get out of trouble, then what in the world are they doing? Well, they're trying to survive, not just physically, but psychologically.
Yeah, and this distinction is so important. We're not just watching people tell lies to fool a judge. No, this is something way more fundamental. Each character is carefully building a narrative, a version of events that allows them to live with themselves. It's a story that preserves their honor, their identity, their place in the world. The literary scholar Tamiko Yoda put it perfectly. Shame isn't just a side effect here. It is the engine driving this whole thing. The bandit needs to be seen as a legendary conqueror, not some common criminal. The wife has to reclaim some sense of control, not just be a passive victim. And the samurai? Well, even in death, he has to protect his honor. These stories aren't just lies. For them, they are an absolute psychological necessity. So here's maybe the best way to think about it. Each testimony isn't a mirror reflecting what really happened. Not at all. It's a suit of armor. You have to remember, in their world with these incredibly strict social codes, a damaging truth could literally mean social death, complete annihilation. So these confessions aren't confessions at all. They're shields, forged to protect their very sense of self from being shattered by judgment. And this is where the story sort of turns the camera back on us. It forces you to ask yourself, if you were in a moment that could completely shatter how you see yourself and how the world sees you, what version of the truth would you tell? Would you really stick to the cold hard facts, even if it meant your own undoing? It's a tough one. Okay, so you're probably thinking, fine, the main 3 are unreliable. I get it. But what about the other witnesses, the people who weren't directly involved? Surely they can give us the straight story, right? Well, Akutagawa dismantles that idea too. Right. Let's talk about these supposedly neutral people on the sidelines. We have a woodcutter who found the body, and a priest who saw the couple on the road earlier that day. On the surface, they seem like our best hope for an objective, unbiased account. But it turns out, even their stories are twisted by their own self-interest. And this breakdown is so key. The woodcutter at first says, oh yeah, I just found the body and a comb. But later, we find out he conveniently left out a pretty important detail, a valuable dagger that went missing. Why? Because he probably stole it and he wants to protect himself. And the priest? He omits details that might shake his fragile faith in humanity. So it's not just what people say, it's what they don't say. Their silence and their omissions shape the story just as much as the wild confessions do. And that brings us to another powerful insight from the story. This idea that claiming you're neutral feels good for the person on the sidelines, but it doesn't actually do much to serve justice. The story suggests that being neutral isn't some moral high ground. It's really just another form of self-preservation. It lets you stand near the fire without getting burned. So this all brings us to the real philosophical core of the story. In a Grove doesn't just show us conflicting stories,
It goes deeper. It suggests that our whole idea of a single, stable, findable truth might just be an illusion. Which, of course, brings us to the ghost. Why bring a ghost into this? I mean, this is the author's masterstroke. In just about any other story, if you hear from the dead guy, that's it. Case closed. You've got your final, undeniable truth. But Akutagawa, he does the exact opposite. The samurai's ghost doesn't solve the mystery. He tells a fourth, completely different version of the story. By making even the victim an unreliable narrator, Akutagawa basically pulls the rug out from under our feet for good. He destroys our last hope for a simple answer. Because if death itself can't clarify things, then there's no ultimate authority left. Not the law, not religion, not anything. So this is what we're left with. The story isn't saying that truth doesn't exist. Not at all. It's suggesting that maybe truth does exist, but it becomes hopelessly fragmented and inaccessible the second it passes through the filter of human consciousness. Our ego, our fears, our desires. It's not that the truth vanishes, it multiplies into a million broken pieces. So after all that, where does that leave us as the reader? Well, Akutagawa famously refuses to give us a solution. And that refusal, that's the entire point of the story. You see, his refusal to give us an ending wasn't a failure. It was a deliberate, powerful choice. If he had just picked one story and said, "This is what happened," then we could all close the book, feel satisfied, and move on. We'd be let off the hook. But he doesn't want us to feel comfortable. That feeling of unease you have when you finish the story, that is precisely the feeling he wanted to create. And this is the final, brilliant move. The story doesn't end with a verdict. It ends by handing the whole messy problem over to us. Akutagawa basically says, "Here, you deal with it." And now we're the ones left to sit with the contradictions, to weigh all the motives, and to confront our own deep discomfort with not knowing. The story becomes our problem to solve. In the end, there is no easy path out of the grove. The fog of human perspective, of shame, of desire, it never lifts. We're left standing there, not with an answer, but with this profound and lingering responsibility to question what we think we know. And maybe more importantly, to ask ourselves why we are so desperate to know it in the first place.